Okay, this is something I have to share. I realize the same corrupt elite, you know, globalist bankers responsible for what I don't know if just discovered, but just verified, will even allow it to make a difference. I doubt they will. For years, I've been saying the government knows better than me about marijuana and schizophrenia and marijuana and psychosis. That's why I presume that no charges were filed against me when I put that landlord in the hospital with the baseball bat, because the government knows. Even the corrupt liberal government of New Mexico, who lies, knows that marijuana sets off schizophrenia. They know better than me that everything I've been saying for years on the internet pointlessly, because the same government suppresses the message, or the people are just too stupid to even understand the message. Yeah, it's true. Well, I came upon quantification, qualification, and falsification of my hypothesis, my theory. Two different things. Accidentally. I'm reading Carl Jung, and Carl Jung has this whole thing about death, old age, and he says, if people fear life during the early years, then they will almost certainly fear death during the later ones. Fear of death is often taken as normal, but Jung believed that death is the goal of life and that life can be fulfilling only when death is seen in this light. So, finding meaning in death. And that got me to think about this CGI video, this animated, computer graphics video of this woman who I think was schizophrenic, but definitely psychotic, and she took medication. And the video is very, very bad. It appears like a wonderful video, very good and wholesome. No, it's actually really horrible. The sane real world is depicted without color, in black and white, dull and dreary, and everyone's walking slow and looking at the ground. They're all sad. And then without her meds, there's all this color, and the animals talk to her, and it's like, whoa, the happy world is the crazy world. And that causes her to commit suicide, and they portray this as like, all this emotionally manipulative music and imagery with a giant sea turtle. Well, as I was Googling that, I found these two videos, which I will link right now. But I'll give a description real quick. So I typed into YouTube schizophrenia 3D animation, because I couldn't remember the name of this video with the woman. And an animation came up for how GABA and glutamate receptors affect schizophrenia by acting as both an accelerant and a brake for dopamine. Now, in all my struggling to figure this out on my own, because much like the rich white Jews and rich white, Europeans of Vashon Island, this data has been out there, but they keep it from me, so I have to struggle on my own to find shit they've known decades ago. Literally, the government used to put out messages. Marijuana causes schizophrenia. The government used to be more honest about it, right? Yeah. Not so much anymore, huh? But sure enough, in this struggle to, as a poor person, I guess, learn what the rich people have known for fucking ever, I found this video showing GABA and glutamate. And so the way that I drew the connection between schizophrenia and marijuana is by the scientific method. If cannabis sets off schizophrenia and other forms of psychosis, activates and exacerbates, if marijuana causes psychosis, even in individuals without a genetic, hereditary predisposition, and that includes CBD, then there has to be a connection with dopamine and serotonin, because what they were having me put on were antipsychotic dopamine blockers, right? Dopamine blocking medication. Therefore, my schizophrenia must be an excess of dopamine. I'm putting out too much dopamine. But that didn't make any sense. It kind of made sense, but to me it was more of eliminating the cause than treating the effects. And the cause was secondhand marijuana. The cause, after I quit marijuana, was involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana, the contact high. You get a lot of liars who lie about this on the internet. I put it simply. There's science to this, but I can put it in a dumb language. Instead of saying the combustion method of chemical extraction, I will simply say, when you put the fire to the plant or electrocute the liquid, the chemical inside the substance goes into the smoke or the vape, and anyone who breathes in the smoke gets the chemical that was in the plant and therefore went into the smoke or in the vape liquid and went into the steam. So it's not just the person lighting it on fire that gets the psychoactive chemical from the smoke, and anyone else who breathes in the smoke doesn't get the psychoactive chemical in the smoke from the plant because they're not the ones who lit the fire. Very simple. But yeah, no, the state of California and other states have verified what colloquially has been referred to as the contact high. It's involuntary intoxication, forced drugging, the chemical in the smoke gets into your bloodstream through inhalation. The government's known this, and not only are they allowing it, they are behind it. They're complicit, right? Is it the government? Is it the bankers? Is it the elites? Is it all three working together? Is there any difference between the three? The lines are pretty blurry, huh? Anyway, so, but that's when I drew a connection between schizophrenia, dopamine, and serotonin. And then I watched these videos, and they say that, GABA and glutamate affect dopamine. All right, it's very specific, and it's weird because when I read the Kalat material in school, he says, "Oh, well, there's various effects from cannabinoids blocking the presynaptic negative feedback, right? Like the postsynaptic, neuron is sending signals to the presynaptic neuron saying, stop sending this stuff, I've already received it. The cannabinoid blocks the presynaptic receptors, that way it doesn't receive the signals, and therefore GABA and glutamate are affected." And he said, "Oh, but it reduces anxiety," which goes against the truth that YouTube still has on their website from 11 years ago. Now, once I post this, there's a good chance that YouTube will run and scrub those videos and all other videos that validate the connection that the government has known since the 1950s at least between marijuana and schizophrenia and other forms of psychosis. Literally. But I'm thinking YouTube has trillions and trillions and trillions of videos, so it's really difficult for them to regulate everything by scrubbing it all. However, I also think that they have other systems of regulation in place to, implement the globalist agenda like marijuana, etc. So odds are they will put in these measures to prevent these videos from getting out, the same way Twitter and everybody else does. Yeah. But there it is. So my only thinking of why the government lied and why Kalat lied and all these other books that I read lie about marijuana being medicinal instead of harmless is money. They are all, you have to sing for your supper, you have to toe the line, you have to repeat the lies told by the people that sign your paychecks, or you don't get a paycheck. That's what I'm thinking, it's greed. And undoubtedly other agendas that I'm not aware of, but yeah, the videos that I watched didn't even say anything about marijuana, but somehow, because I read that thing about the cannabinoids blocking the, presynaptic receptor negative feedback loop, I drew a connection then between GABA, glutamate, and schizophrenia, and GABA and glutamate and dopamine. And these videos line it up. I will include a screenshot of the cannabinoid thing that they teach us in the school as well, including the lie Kalat told about, oh, it decreases anxiety, instead of, oh, it causes psychosis. Caused a man in Edmonds or something to stab his mom over 45 times in cannabis-induced psychosis from a cannabis brownie. Was that to reduce the anxiety his mom was causing him? See, the cannabis reduced the anxiety. His mom was the cause of the anxiety. The cannabis-induced psychosis caused him to kill his mom, and his anxiety went away from his mom. I mean, now it's worse because he's in prison, but...
Cortical glutamate can regulate dopamine in two ways, as a direct accelerator and as an indirect brake. The descending glutamatergic pathway normally acts as an accelerator on the mesocortical dopamine pathway, ultimately guiding higher brain centers in the cortex. If NMDA receptors in the midbrain are dysfunctional, dopamine misfiring may contribute to cognitive impairments and symptoms of schizophrenia. In contrast, the glutamate neurons that connect to the dopamine neurons involved in the limbic system have a GABA interneuron in between. GABA inhibits the release of dopamine, acting as a brake on dopamine pathways. If this brake is removed, for example by less glutamatergic activity, excess dopamine can contribute to the occurrence of positive symptoms of psychosis. Metabotropic glutamate receptors help modulate excitation and inhibition in the CNS. It is theorized that loss of cortical and/or hippocampal GABA interneurons in schizophrenia contributes to loss of inhibitory control of downstream glutamate release and postsynaptic neuronal excitation. mGlu23 receptor agonists normalize postsynaptic excitation via presynaptic regulation of glutamate release. Glycine reuptake is the major route of inactivation of synaptic glycine. Several glycine transport inhibitors exist, including sarcosine and drugs in clinical development. The presence of these glycine transport inhibitors increase the availability of glycine at the synapse, thus enhancing NMDA receptor activity.
That means the government, etc., the rich, the elites, they've known and know better than me everything I'm learning. And they're still pushing it anyway. Like this connection between GABA, glutamate, dopamine, serotonin, and presynaptic negative feedback receptors. The government's far beyond me on this knowledge. So they are evil as fuck. Drug dealers, I doubt they know, but even if they do, they wouldn't care. No successful drug dealer lets moral or ethical boundaries stand between them and profit. They will kill 1 million kids before they give up their money and their power voluntarily.